Welcome to Women in Westminster. My name is Eleni and I love politics past and present. I'm passionate that people should be more educated about government and feel more invested and less apathetic about the huge decisions that affect their lives. I decided to embark on a series of discussions with some of the most politically active women in the UK. My reasoning behind this is that, as a young woman who is interested in politics, it would hopefully inspire and educate other young women to become more involved in the world of governance and public affairs. My other objective is to highlight the solidarity that can exist even between people from opposing sides of the political spectrum, and to remind my audience that public figures are human, just like you and me. All of the women on my podcast support gender equality in UK politics and global politics. Women were only given equal voting rights to men in 1928, but in less than 100 years we've now seen 3 female prime ministers, the 50-50 cabinet, the first female chancellor in our history. Whether or not you agree with these women's views, there's no denying that we have made huge progress and that these are massive achievements. However, at the time of recording, only 40% of members of the House of Commons and 29% of members of the House of Lords are women. We still have a long way to go, and as you will hear in my episodes, there are still barriers, and there is still room for change, to ensure that there is a continual presence of women in Westminster. Welcome to the first ever episode of Women in Westminster, where we explore the human stories behind the headlines. I'm your host, Eleni Barrett, and joining us today is Kim Leadbeater. Kim is the Labour MP for her hometown, Batley and Spen. In 2016, she helped to establish the Jo Cox Foundation, which aims to galvanise positive change and to honour the legacy of Kim's late sister, Jo Cox, who was previously the MP for Kim's constituency. Kim was elected to the House of Commons in 2021 and has continued to advocate for the safety of MPs and the prevention of online abuse. So Kim, both you and your sister chose to go down the political route. What do you think was the catalyst for this? Was it due to your parents?
Hi Eleni. Yeah, I think it's probably slightly more accurate to say that Jo chose to go down a political route. I wouldn't say I necessarily chose to end up being an MP, but I was certainly inspired by Jo and the work that she'd done. And I think in terms of thinking about our parents and our childhood, I wouldn't describe us as a particularly political family, but I think what we did have from our parents and from our wider family and friends was a real sense of right and wrong and a real sense of justice and injustice. So I think we had what I guess you would describe as political principles instilled in us from a young age, even though we wouldn't necessarily have framed it around a particular political ideology. We certainly always had a strong sense of right and wrong and, fighting for equality and fighting for justice, which, are the principles of the Labour Party and are my core beliefs. So yeah, and again, I did lots of other things with my life before entering politics. I think it's fair to say probably wouldn't have ended up in this line of work if it wasn't A, for Jo and B, for her horrific murder. But I'd always tried to do jobs where I made a difference in some sort of way. And being an MP
that's a good way to be.
Even though it's a very difficult job in lots of ways, it's a way that you can certainly try and help people and make a difference. And that's what I was inspired by in the way that Jo did the job, and that's hopefully the way that I try and do the job.
Yeah, your sister was hugely inspirational, and I think that you in turn have also inspired a lot of people. So I'd like to know what has been the proudest moment in your career so far.
In my time as an MP, there's lots of really lovely, what you might call, I guess, small wins in this job. And a lot of that is involved in the constituency work when you help people who have been struggling with various issues, whether that's around, health or education or, getting them money that they're entitled to that they hadn't been given for pensions and things like that. So lots of small wins. I guess my biggest win sort of on a changing the law type of scale is there's a young man in my constituency called Zach Eagley.
Okay.
And during lockdown he started doing some fundraising. And Zach has got epilepsy and cerebral palsy. And he started doing a walking challenge around his garden. And as he was doing this challenge and he was publishing what he was doing online, and he started getting trolled
that's horrible.
by some horrible people who would send flashing images online.
That's disgusting.
And the reason they did that was to make people with epilepsy have a seizure.
That's not right.
It's a concept that's really difficult to believe and understand, to be quite honest with you. And when I found out about this, and Zach and his lovely mum Claire contacted me, they'd been campaigning for a little while already to try and get a law in place that would make that an offence. And I found out about it and I said, I really want to support you with this work. And we managed to get a clause in the Online Safety Bill, as it was then.
That's great.
Which eventually became the Online Safety Act, called Zach's Law, which makes that a criminal offence to troll people online and send flashing images to people with epilepsy. So I guess in terms of changing the law and having a massive impact on the lives of lots of people, Zach's law is something I was particularly proud to be involved with.
Well, yeah, you should be proud of
and that's
that.
when you really see the power of being an MP in the way that you can influence and you can change lives, which isn't always easy as an opposition MP.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Obviously, it's much easier to do from the government benches, but that was something I was particularly proud of. And I guess, representing my home area, as you say, I was born and brought up in Batley and Spen. Every town and village means a lot to me. Being able to stand up and proudly represent the area that I care so deeply about is something that I guess makes me proud on a very regular basis.
Yeah, wow, thank you for that. I'm sure it is. It's great you've been able to live in the area you were born in for your whole life, because I think it shows you've got a real connection to the people that you represent in part.
Yeah, and I think that really matters to me. I think understanding the area you represent, and I'm not saying you can't be a good MP somewhere where you weren't necessarily born or brought up, but for me, because of my story, because of Joe, that local connection is really important. And I remember when I was deciding whether to stand or not, and that was a really massive decision for me and my family. I thought about how I would feel if someone got the job who didn't have that connection and didn't care about this local area in the way that I do, and that would have been really sad for me to see. And that was one of the things that eventually made me put myself forward.
Well, I'm sure your constituents think you're absolutely great. But if you could time travel to any historical event or era, which would you choose, and what would you hope to witness or change?
Goodness me, these are deep questions. I'd probably go back to the 80s and never have my hair in such a bad perm.
Can't have been that
bad. Kind of on a personal level, which I then ended up hanging on to for about 10 years too long. No, what would I go back and change? Oh my goodness. There's so many things out there where, particularly when we think about wars and conflicts and things where you'd like to be able to go back and influence things to have gone a different way. It's really difficult to pick one particular thing.
Yeah, sorry, I should have sent the questions a little bit further in advance.
I always try, actually, if I think about it, to look forward. And I'm very lucky in my life. I don't have many regrets about the things that I've done. And ultimately, I had a really, really good life prior to Joe's murder. So if there's one thing I would change, it would be that had never happened.
Yeah, of course.
But what I've tried to do, particularly since that day, is to look forward and look at how, we can't change the past no matter how much we might want to, but we can try and forge out a more positive future. And that's what my focus tends to be on. I'm learning from the mistakes of the past as well, but looking forward with a vision where you can make a bigger impact to as many people as possible, I think is more how I tend to live my life rather than looking back. I am a reflector. I do like to reflect on things and think about how things can be improved, but I think driving forward with a positive vision is more my focus, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, of course. I think that's a great life philosophy to have. And, to some extent, it's something I try to implement into my own life. You can't change the past. You have to just make the most of what you have and look forward to that your life is worthwhile and you can have, the maximum impact possible.
I agree. And also, and it's particularly challenging in this job, there's only so much that you can do to change things. And I think you've got to focus on your sphere of influence and the things that you can improve with the time and with the power, whatever that looks like, that you've got. And unfortunately, other than learning from the past, as you quite rightly say, what's done is done. Our job is to learn from it and to move forward and to make sure mistakes aren't made again, and to create a more positive vision for the future.
Yeah. If you were to write a book about your life, what would the title be, and what would be the central message or theme?
I think I am very much inspired by Joe's words around having more in common than that which divides us, and focusing on basic humanity. And I guess the principle I always think about when I think about our childhood is treating people how you would wish to be treated. There used to be a book when we were growing up, and there was a character in the book, I think it was an Enid Blyton book, and there was a guy called Mr. Do As You Would Be Done By. I remember thinking, gosh, that's a really important message, and just that basic humanity of how we treat people. So I think that for me is a really important thread that would run through anything that I would write, and also the ability to see things from different perspectives. So we get very entrenched, and particularly nowadays, and social media's got a big role to play in this. We become entrenched in our own positions, and sometimes we're too busy talking and we don't listen enough. And as much as I talk a lot, and everyone knows and will tell you that, I also do listen a lot. So I think having your ears open and sometimes having your mouth shut is really important, and listening to different opinions. I sometimes get frustrated in Parliament when we're in the chamber and we describe what's going on as a debate, and actually it's not always a debate. it's people just speaking and not really listening to the other opinions and thoughts of other people. And I think we need a much more nuanced discussion where you actually are open-minded to different views and opinions. So I suppose that's kind of my philosophy, which would underpin a lot of what I've done in life.
Okay, yeah, I agree with what you were saying about people needing to listen more than they speak. You know, we've got one mouth, we've got two ears, so surely we should be listening to other viewpoints as well. Because if you want a project to move forward, I think it needs to be influenced by multiple viewpoints. And yeah, no, I'd definitely read your book.
Yeah, and I think it's also about, you are a product of your environment and you're a product of your history. And I think we're also really quick sometimes to judge people on their views and opinions without necessarily trying to understand why they hold those views and opinions. And I think, I was really lucky. I had a great childhood. I definitely could have wished for in terms of love and, we weren't rich or anything, but I always had good family around me, good friends around me. And that created my moral framework. And if you don't have that strong start in life and you have challenges and in situations where you've had a difficult time, that always, fuels how you feel about things. And sometimes that might lead to views that, I don't particularly agree with. But you've got to be able to have that open conversation about understanding why someone feels how they feel about something. And also, finding, as I sort of alluded to before, that common ground and understanding other people's perspectives. I'm trying to think of a snazzy book title which kind of sums that all up, but I'm not entirely sure. I'll keep thinking.
Well, I'm sure we can come back to that. To find out what Kim would call her book, join us for part 2.